let me move on to my last review here to make sure I get it in before my time expires here. I've been going through, as I said, the Legends of the Dark Knight. I don't have another installment of that this time because I said at some point, Legends of the Dark Knight, I know the recap I say every week, but it was a run started in the 90s after the enormous success of Batman 89, and they wanted more Batman titles to sell because Batman was very popular, but a lot of new people were coming into comic shops, new to comics, wanting to find out what to read. And, of course, the comic owners are going to push graphic novels on here, read Dark Knight Returns or read this, that. But if they wanted to read an ongoing title, it's oftentimes, especially if you're not used to comics or not used to superhero universes, it's kind of difficult to jump right into a continuity. And they were already well within, the post-crisis continuity in the 90s with both the Batman title and Detective Comics title. So they started Legends of the Dark Knight, which, as I've said before, it was supposed to be all sort of self-contained stories that happened earlier on in Batman's career, first few years tops, and no real big crossovers, so you didn't have to understand lots of things about the DC universe to follow the stories. And they were great. I've been reviewing them every now and then. A story arc will come by that I'm not crazy about, but it was pretty good. Now, in 1992, they knew that Batman Returns was going to be released. So DC got ahead of the game a little bit this time. They released Legends of the Dark Knight like a year later or so after the 1989 boom because they weren't prepared. No one was prepared for how well Batman 89 was going to do, and what a craze it was going to create. And Batmania everywhere. So when they knew that Batman Returns was coming out, they went ahead and greenlit another title, another run called Shadow of the Bat. And this ran for maybe about 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And the most of these were written by Alan Grant. You've got the great Norm Brayfogle on most of the titles on the art, not on this episode 0. I'll show you some great Norm Brayfogle's art there in a bit. But the point behind the Shadow of the Bat run is that they want to try to go back more into the psychology of the characters in Batman's world. Now, this was contemporary for the time in terms of continuity. So you'll see Tim Drake's Robin show up. If Dick Grayson shows up, he's Nightwing. So it is in sort of the contemporary times of that day continuity, Batman continuity in general. And I love that era anyway. I love the Tim Drake Robin era. No nonsense, no Red Robin crap, no Damian Wayne isn't even, an idea yet, his torpy little self. So I like this. It's even before the Red Hood comes back, and Jason Todd. And the Shadow of the Bat series, I read I read quite a few of the issues back in the day. I would have been like 12. And I remember enjoying parts of them, but I really didn't know what I enjoyed about them. And so going back through them now is a lot of fun. I'm just going to cover the first 5 issues, counting episode 0, or issue 0. The issue 0 is a self-contained issue, and it's fine. It's not amazingly wonderful, great story, but it's good. It serves its purpose. It's sort of giving the background of Batman's, origin story, but sort of the psychology behind that. It does a weird thing in where it kind of situates itself in the narrative time as though it's Batman's much older. And it's got by the end, you realize that Alfred has long since retired, and it's just Bruce Wayne alone in the mansion. And I'm like, I don't like that. Alfred would never just retire and leave Bruce. I mean, he might have to be in a wheelchair, or might not be able to do the work he does, but he would never just leave Bruce. But it's a fine opening to the title. It's just sort of, let's just get the baseline. This is sort of the psychological bent that we're going to look at, but it's really nothing to write home about, big time. But this was written by Alan Grant too. And that was fine. Episode 0, whatever, breaks us into the series. But then there's the 4-part series, or a 4-part arc, called Batman Shadow of the Bat, The Last Arkham. And this is a really cool story. 4 parts here. The covers are kind of funny. Or kind of, not funny. What's where I'm looking? Stylized. Super stylized covers, Not the kind of art you'd see in the book. But it's Norm Brayfogle in the interior art. So I'll try to find Norm Brayfogle has got to be my favorite Batman art. If I had to really just pin down to one favorite Batman artist ever, I'd have to say Norm Brayfogle. He's just I like so many great Batman artists. I mean, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, of course, is just known for his canon DC characters. I mean, so many great artists have done these characters, but Norm Brayfogle, that's the artist I grew up on, reading these characters, and it's just so brilliant. Of course, I hate the fact that Nightwing for a time had that weird little rat tail ponytail. It's so weird. But anyway, it's a really cool story. Now, I'll say this about it. It gets dark because it's going into the psychology of these characters. And here's Breyfogle. Breyfogle always had the tall ears, too, which I think is so important to Batman. I hate it when there's designs that have the short little nub ears. Like, it shouldn't look like a helmet. It should look like a bat. It's a cowl. It should look like a bat, you know? But, you know, Dark Knight Returns had come out in the 80s. And I remember reading that as a kid when I was getting into Batman, right around 89 there, so 9 or 10 or whatever. And I understood that it was an Elseworlds tale. So I could accept it as that. I knew it wasn't the real Batman, quote unquote. You know, it was an Elseworlds tale. But of course, everybody tried to make Batman so much darker after that. And it was just dumb. I mean, the book wasn't even all that great. And people just, you know, touted it as like the greatest turning point bastion of Batman. I'm like, no. I mean, have you seen the art? Frank Miller draws like a 5-year-old, first of all. Story-wise, it's an interesting Elseworlds tale. That's good. That's good. And that's enough. And that's all. But what I like about the 90s era of Batman, so whether we're looking at any of the titles, Batman, Detective Comics, Legends of the Dark Knight, Shadow of the Bat, what I love about that era of Batman is that it got as dark as you could get without crossing the line. And this story is a perfect example. So I'm going to spoil just a little bit of the first issue for you, but it's a 4-issue arc. I do recommend checking it out. The Last Arkham, Shadow of the Bat, Last Arkham. The premise at the very beginning, you find that Jeremiah Arkham, the nephew, I think, of Amadeus Arkham, who opens Arkham Asylum, and of course Amadeus Arkham, that's canon across a lot of different places, that he's the one who went insane. He opened the asylum, but then went insane himself, trying to kill people and stuff like that. At least the villains. So Jeremiah Arkham, his nephew, comes in and wants to redo the whole asylum, even remodel it, and bring in a lot of his new views of treatment and all of this stuff. Victor Zsasz, this is actually the first comic appearance of Victor Zsasz, is in this 4-issue arc run. A lot of people don't know that, but Shadow of the Bat, Victor Zsasz came about in the 90s from this run here. And a wonderful character, but a super dark character, right? I mean, you know, from the Arkham games, if you've at least played those, he's the serial killer who wants to make a mark on his body after all of his villains. So he's got all these tally scars all over him and everything. And he's twisted. He's sick and twisted. And he's there's no method to his madness. He just will kill anybody because he thinks that he's relieving them of the burden of existence and so forth. He's dark. He's twisted. He's terrifying. And so you can have dark villains. There's even a part in here where you see Batman. He sees some of these villains. There's this little girl whose father had been abusing her, and he's trying to help the little girl, and somebody murders her family, and he's just really upset. He's righteously indignant, you know, for the state of things and this little girl and so forth. So you see him being kind of brusque. He's a little like abrupt with Jim Gordon even, and they go to the asylum because Zsasz is in the asylum, but this style of killing really looks like Zsasz's style, so they want to make sure he's there. Batman is like snapping at police and all this stuff, and then this one police officer, this detective, makes a joke about something, one of the murders they see, and Batman just goes off and just like hauls off and punches him and is on top of him and is like beating him. And they pull Batman off of him, and they realize that the detective has no pulse, so Batman's just killed this detective. All right, now, you know, that's crap. You don't put that in a Batman story. That's ridiculous. But you, of course, eventually find out that Batman's been working with Jim Gordon all along. This was a ruse they were planning because they wanted to get Batman into Arkham Asylum as a patient, right? And Jeremiah Arkham won't take his mask off because he wants him to be the one to give him the mask once he's cured or whatever, you know. So you know, there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief you got to put into the story. But that kind of thing, like make it dark, but then realize, no, it's still the iconic Batman in the end. That's not Batman would never. He didn't kill a police officer. He wouldn't even be rude to Jim Gordon. That was all an act. It's all an act, you know, because they want to get him sort of undercover in Arkham Asylum to find out what's going on, to find out, you know, is there a villain there? You really suspect Zsasz, but how would Zsasz do it, and so forth. So I like that aspect of this era, that it would get dark subject matter even with the villains sometimes, like Victor Zsasz, for crying out loud, and yet Batman never strayed. He never crossed the line from being the true blue iconic Batman. And I like that because it proves to you that he can still be iconic Batman in a dark story. He can still be the true blue. There's nothing cheesy about his values and his morals and the things that he'll do and the things he won't do. There's nothing cheesy about that at all. He can still be Batman, even if it's a darker story. And of course, they started crossing. I still like the 2000s comics. There are a lot of great things in the aughts, but they started crossing the line a little bit here and there. Of course, by the time New 52 happened, just throw it all out the window, make everything as dark and crappy as you possibly can, and that's the New 52. To say nothing of Tom King's garbage with the Rebirth thing. But anyway, so I like this era because it proves that. And this run, The Shadow of the Bat. Now I haven't read every single issue back in the day. I'm going to go through them now in order. But this first 4-arc issue, The Last Arkham, check it out. If you want to see a great example of how a story can be a dark Batman story, dark enough to appease any of the Batman should be in dark, but he doesn't. He doesn't have to be insane. He doesn't have to kill people. Stop it with that nonsense. Love the ads too. Like I said, just takes me back in the day. There's the ads for Batman Returns that was coming out. There are video game ads in here, ads for different comic lines that they were trying to go, like the Eclipso, what's the other comics, different comic runs. Thunderbolt, was that the name? Cool World. I remember when Cool World came out, I was like, that looks so cool. You know, my 12-year-old hormones and everything. But all of that stuff just takes me right back to that time. I love that era. So anyway, I definitely recommend The Last Arkham from The Shadow of the Bat. It's the first multi-issue story arc from that line. And you can pick them up. I mean, these were at my local comic shop for 99 cents a piece. Now, I have a lot of the issues already. Some of them I lost over the years, but I have a lot of them too, so I'm able to kind of supplement here and there. But if, you know, these back issues, these aren't like trying to find something from the 60s or something. It's just the 90s. And for most of the time, you can go into any comic shop with long boxes and find them very cheaply and get a whole wonderful run. And boom, right there. So I recommend it.